everyone. Happy Friday. Happy 28th of February, and tomorrow is leap year, right? So thank you everybody for coming out today. And as you know, this is Black History Month, and as we know, Black history is all year long. Unfortunately, we're sort of relegated to that 1 month. But we want to take an opportunity to share some information with you. And today, we have a special guest. Many of you probably know her from New York One. If she'll just pop right up here for a moment. Everyone, this is Cheryl Wills, and I have the pleasure of introducing her. Like many of you, we know Cheryl from New York One, and we know Cheryl's history with New York One. We all remember when New York One started, many of us. Well, maybe you don't want to date ourselves. We don't want to date ourselves. But as you know, Cheryl is one of the original faces at New York One, and she's been there, and she's a staple for many of us. As a matter of fact, years ago, when I got rid of my cable, I said, wait, I have no more New York One. I went and got cable again. Now we can find it online, streaming, so we can still see Cheryl. As you know, she's an anchor, she's a reporter, she's a former health reporter, so many of you might have heard of her work when she was doing health reporting for New York One. She's been there since it's 1990, okay, that year. But she has a loyal following, as you know, and obviously we can hear how many people have come out to hear what she's got to share. And as you know, several years ago, Cheryl talked about discovering her grandfather's story, and it's led to a number of books and her presentations about her family's life. And it's really inspirational for many people who have gone on to find out what their family's history and ancestry is. I was talking to James earlier, who shared some information going back to 1865. So we've got lots of stories, and I'm sure that you've all taken opportunities to look at Ancestry.com as well. So today, I want to have Cheryl come up and talk a little more about what she's doing, and we'd love for you to have some time to talk to her after, but she's going to start with a presentation. And I just want to say thank you all for coming out, and on behalf of the Office of the President, welcome, and we welcome you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. I think I have a microphone here. Hold on, stay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I'll give you a little tidbit of news. As you all know, plastic bags are history this weekend. So, Dawn, I'm starting you off with your own New York One bag. Right? You can't buy this in any store, so go into Whole Foods with pride, okay? And I've been at New York One 28 years. You believe that? 28 years. When I used to be the health reporter and come through here with my camera and my equipment, I was a one-woman show. But now I have my own real show. It's called New York One Live at 10. And I won't be there tonight because I have another event, but every night. And this is all for you, my dear.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your support through the years. Okay, so I am aware of the time constraints. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy afternoon to be here. I am honored to be in your presence. I stand before you, ladies and gentlemen, as the great-great-great-granddaughter of an enslaved man who fought in the Civil War. This is relevant because when I was a kid growing up in New York City, I had no idea. Here is what I actually knew. I knew that I had a father who was a proud paratrooper. My father loved the military. While people were being drafted in the 60s, he volunteered. He had passion and love for country. Sadly, my father in the 70s lost his way. And every time I come to Brooklyn, I think of him because he was killed on his motorcycle on the Williamsburg Bridge. My father became a New York City firefighter, and these are his fellow firefighters carrying his mangled body into a church. So I and my 4 siblings and my mother, his widow, could say goodbye for the last time. In the midst of my 13-year-old grief, I had a very important question. Who was this man? When I opened his funeral program, It said, Clarence Wills was born in Haywood County, Tennessee. We all strutted around New York like we were dyed-in-the-wool New Yorkers. That was a country boy in that box. And he never talked about his Southern roots. As anyone can tell you who suffered a loss as a child, I never had closure. I wanted to know more. I knew I had ancestors who were enslaved, but the answer was always, you're never going to know who they are. You're never going to know. Stop asking. Well, I'm glad, like yourself, that I never stopped asking, because when I did the research, I learned that my father and my grandfather both grew up in the same town as Sandy Wills. Sandy Wills was born a slave in 1840 in Tennessee. He was sold at auction to Edmund Wills when he was 10 years old. I'm the first in my family to find that out. We have been carrying the name of a stranger for generations, and I was the first, thanks to census records, thanks to military records, and the hiring of a professional genealogist. I was the first to figure out Edmund Willis Wills was the one who bought my grandpa Sandy. Grandpa Sandy got to his plantation in Tennessee, Haywood County, and he bonded with 5 little boys. See, Edmund Wills was in the business of buying human beings. And he bought one boy after another, knowing that they would impregnate women and make more slaves for him. This was, of course, as you all know, a sick, tragic time in our country's history. James Wills, Andy Wills, Mac Wills, Dick Wills, and Richard Wills. They all grew up with my grandpa Sandy under the ownership of Edmund Wills, but they were in the right place at the right time, because my research taught me that when the Civil War broke out in 1861, they clearly realized this war has something to do with us. They waited 1862, 1863, the moment President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, they made a run for it and enlisted in the United States Colored Troops. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so proud to show you my grandpa Sandy's enlistment record. This hasn't been seen since it was filled out in 1863. No one cared to find it. I'm so glad that I was able to use my journalism skills, and it is profound. One of the things that I've done is I've interpreted what this form means. It has his name. It has USCT, United States Colored Troops. He was in Company G. He was about 23 years old. The enslaved population always guessed their age because they did not keep accurate records for this precious population. They took his height, 5'9½". They took his complexion. They wrote BLK, BLK, BLK. They didn't see him. They just saw a black thing. And true to form, they didn't even bother to write out the words black. But what I teach students as recent as this morning in Pelham Middle School, there's a line on these enlistment forms that's shocking, and that is, as you can see, with all of the men who my grandfather grew up with and they escaped to fight in the Civil War, occupation. Someone had the audacity to write slave. Occupation, slave, over and over. But when it came to my great-great-great-grandpa, Sandy Wills, my blood, whose DNA is in me right now, it says occupation farmer. The sister saw it. This is a hallelujah moment for me. I know we're in Downstate, okay, but this is my hallelujah dancing on one leg moment, because that means my grandfather, even though he was illiterate, clearly said, do not put slave on that form. That means my grandfather took a stand and said, you will not define me. I believe our children need that lesson today, because people are still looking people up and down and slapping their filthy labels all over them. We all need to take a stand and say, you are not setting my definition. I am setting my own definition. My grandfather sent me that message from the grave, and I'm so proud of him. He almost whispers to me, granddaughter, I never believed a word they said about me. I use this to dispel the notion that every slave was ignorant. I use this to dispel the notion that they were just objects and didn't know what was going on. Wrong. Even a young man that my grandfather enlisted with, Dick Wills, the moment he enlisted, he changed his last name to Parker. And when I went into his file and saw the records, he said plainly, my mother named me for my father, Dick Parker Sr. And I'm taking back my identity right now. No history book teaches this. And my friends, I needed to know that this courage was in my family when I lost my father at age 13. But no one told me about Sandy Wills. No one told me about the United States Colored Troops. I have written multiple books about my grandfather's honorable service. This is his honorable discharge. It was just sitting in his file. No one has seen this since 1866. Know ye that Sandy Wills, private in the 4th Heavy Field Artillery. And what I find so profound is that they handed this document to my grandfather and he could not read a word of it. Let that sink in. These 200,000 men that served in the United States Colored Troops were given papers that they could not read. But my grandfather, he knew what this meant. It meant that he outsmarted slavery, because slavery had meant for him to be born a slave and die a slave. And Sandy Wills did something extraordinary. He lived on his own terms. I'm so proud to represent him here today. And well, thank you very much. And I got a soft spot for hospitals. I gotta tell you, I was at Queens Hospital yesterday, and I'm running because I do a lot of events during Black History Month. And I gotta tell you, you're probably saying, what is that? I brought this just for you. It's gonna blow your mind at the end of my presentation. In the news business, we call that a tease. So very quickly, Sandy Wills did not return to Edmund Wills's plantation at the conclusion of the war. He returned to a neighboring plantation where he could start a life as a sharecropper. And I've written about it in multiple books, which are on sale this afternoon. The first book I ever wrote 10 years ago, Die Free, A Heroic Family Tale. And I've also written books for children, because I am not ashamed to say, and I'm not shy to say it, our history is not taught properly in schools across this country. And I'm sick of it. I love Martin Luther King, I love Harriet Tubman, but our history is far more vast than Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman. They're extraordinary, I honor them, but there were millions of Sandy Willses. There were millions of regular, everyday people who helped stomp slavery to the ground. And all of the nuances that happened during this critical period, our students need to know it, to help eliminate some of the ignorance, to help stop people from asking, so where are you from? What are you? What does your name mean? That's ignorance. Everyone is from somewhere. No one has a right to stake their claim. We are a nation of immigrants, period. Stop asking people where they're from. Our students need to know that. You can ask someone their background, you can ask someone to tell you more, but don't act like you're American and somebody just broke in your house. Come on now. Can I keep it real? Is it okay? It's the last day of Black History Month. I've been talking about this all month. Sometimes I gotta keep it 150. So when Sandy Wills, my great-great-great-grandfather, returned to Tennessee, he met a beautiful young woman named Emma, and this is the book that just came out February 1st of this year. I have sold a lot of books. None sells quicker than this book. If you are going to purchase it, I think there are 20 left. He told me now I could have got more books, but unfortunately, there are not a lot left today. This book is touching the lives of children unlike anything I've ever done, because Emma made the transition from slavery to freedom when she was 13 years old. And she was on a plantation owned by this man, John Bertie Moore. That's really him. There's no real picture of Emma, but that's a sure enough painting of John Bertie Moore. He was in the business of buying and selling precious human beings. No one told him there was anything wrong with it, and so he did it until the day he died. He owned Emma and her whole family. Emma's family were the house slaves. They were very attached to John Bertie Moore's family. And when Sandy took one look at Emma, they married. She was about 17 at this time. And Emma realized something. It was 1869, January 25th, when they married. And Emma realized, I am the first woman to get married in a real ceremony that will be recognized by the state of Tennessee. See, our children need to know that enslaved people who were married, their marriages were not recognized. That's why they could be sold. One could be sold to Mississippi, the other to Louisiana. No one cared because their union wasn't considered legal. Emma was the first real marriage in my family. When she got pregnant, she also realized, this baby is the first baby who will never be sold to anyone. This is the first free baby. And she, in her teenage years, realized, although I was kept illiterate, I want someone to write down my family legacy. She was so brilliant that she went to someone who once owned her, Joel Moore, the son of John Bertie Moore. And she said, can you write? She had a family Bible, and some of you may know that the old-time Bibles, you kept a family record. That was the family record. She took that Bible she couldn't read for herself. She gave it to Joel and said, can you write in my Bible, my first baby? And he said, sure. When William Wills was born, he wrote in her Bible, William Wills, born February 3rd, 1870. That's why that cover looks the way it is. She kept her Bible. She had her second son, Alex. He's my great-great-grandfather. And she went right back to Joel Moore. Can you write in my Bible, my son? His name is Alex. He wrote in her Bible, Alex Wills, born September 20th, 1871. She didn't do it once. She didn't do it twice. She did it for all 9 of her children. She was so genius. Why? Because when her husband, Sandy Wills, the Civil War veteran, died, she had razor-sharp instincts, and she clearly said, I am now a widow, all alone, in this shack with 9 children. What am I going to do? And she was astute because she said, The white widows in this neighborhood whose husbands fought in the Civil War, they get a pension every month from the government to take care of their children. Well, my husband is also a veteran. I think I should get one too. She went right back to Joel Moore. Can you help me? Where do we go? I'm sure she asked. And he said, well, we have to write Washington and we'll see what happens. They wrote Washington, filled out the application. They immediately shot back a letter. Mrs. Wills, your claim for a widow's pension is denied. Shocker, right? One would think that Emma Wills would have, well, she's illiterate, she's a former slave, she has 9 children, her husband is dead, she lives in the middle of nowhere in Haywood County, Tennessee. I'm so pleased to tell you, Downstate family, my great-great-great-grandmother hired a lawyer. May I present to you Exhibit A? Deposition A, case of Emma Wills, sitting in the file. No one had seen this. I needed to know this. When I was a 13-year-old girl and my father's body was taken to Kings County morgue, I needed to know that there were people in my family that had, shall we say, chutzpah, my friend. I needed to know that this existed. That's why I say our history isn't taught properly. There were millions of women like Emma who you tried to push them around and they stood their ground. My grandmother told her lawyer, do what you have to do. And that's exactly what they did. That lawyer's name was C.M. Sweet. And she told him, please, my husband served and he was honorably discharged, and she gave him the honorable discharge certificate. When I read all of the documents, it blew my mind. The arrogance, you think this is new? It goes way back. The arrogance of the federal government. They literally said, Mrs. Wills, give us your birth date so we can complete the top line of your application. They knew she couldn't do it. The lawyer sent back a letter. My client doesn't know her birthday. And then they sent back, and keep in mind, this is Pony Express, okay? DC via horse to Tennessee. It took months. The children were starving, dependent on charity. Mrs. Wills, your claim is denied again. My grandmother told her lawyer to appeal. She essentially said, you're not going to blame me for being a slave. No. The lawyer appealed. Please give us another chance. Review our client's case. They reviewed it and sent back a letter. Please, Mrs. Wills, since you failed to provide proof of your birth, please give us proof of your husband's birth. And they called him the alleged soldier. The lawyer sent back a letter. We don't have proof of Sandy Wills. We gave you his honorable discharge. We don't have proof of his birth. And you could tell they were like, this is why we routinely deny you former slaves. You can't even prove that you exist. You could be anyone claiming to be the widow of Sandy Wills. My grandmother, Emma, told her lawyer to keep going back. She spent, and I saw it with my own 2 eyes, $10 per filing. $10 was a lot of money in 1890. A lot of money now. The third time, they sent back a letter. Mrs. Wills, you have failed to provide proof of your birth as required by our applicants. You have failed to provide proof of your husband's birth. This is our last request, and we're not entertaining any more of your appeals. Give us proof that those children were born to you and Sandy Wills. And my beautiful grandmother that history forgot grabbed her little Bible and handed it over to her lawyer. And this is not my assumption. If you look closely, you could see they transcribed everything in that Bible. The previous page says William Wills, born February 3rd, 1870, still living. This one says, the next one, Alex, that's my great-great-grandfather, was born September 20th, 1871, and he is still living. They went all the way down the line, and I guess the federal government said, well, I'll be damned. Pardon my French. And they paid my grandmother her pension for herself and her 9 children. The triumphant stories that we unearth not only during Black History Month, but all year round. When I share this story with children, I direct their attention to something that's very emotional for me. At the end of this legal battle, my grandmother won, but they told her something that breaks my heart. They said, Mrs. Wills, we need you to sign this. And I look at their beautiful penmanship, and then I note where they say, we'll write your name for you. Emma Wills, her mark. When I first saw her mark, it truly took my breath away, because I, like yourselves, have been signing my name without giving it any thought my entire life, it seems. And I never even stopped to consider that a grandmother 3 generations removed was forced to sign with an X. Students always ask me, Miss Wills, are you mad? And I go, no, I'm not mad, but I do intend to get even. Here's how I get even: by taking back the X. That X belongs to me now, and it represents something that I encourage students to do. Let's make that X make us excellent. Let's make that X make us extraordinary. Let's turn that X and use it to be exceptional. That's how I own the X now. Enough with our children doing just enough to get by. There is a reason our students must be excellent, and it's non-negotiable. Can I say that? It's non-negotiable that we require excellence of our students. Everyone has someone in their family who was illiterate not by their choice. You dial the clock back far enough and you will see millions of Emmas. Very quickly. Emma won, and one of the questions I had was, where are they buried? Where could they be buried? The first thing I did was I checked all of the local cemeteries in Haywood County, forget it. And wouldn't you know it, ladies and gentlemen, the plantation where Emma and Sandy lived is exactly how they left it. The family is the same family descended from John Bertie Moore 200 years later. The family calls it Moorland. And they sanitized it of any existence of slaves. They even sell cotton to this day. And I had a cousin who found me on social media, and he said, I'm going down there. And I said, well, look, he's from the South. I'm like, I'm a New Yorker. We don't do that. You go ahead, and if you make it back alive, let me know what happened. Well, this is what he found. He went literally trespassed on their property, and he found the grave of John Bertie Moore. He found the grave of his wife, Judith, and one of their children. And I got very excited. I said, wait a minute. They buried on their property on the hill, as was custom. Are you telling me that my family, a Civil War soldier, could be buried there as well? Well, I immediately went into action. Whenever I'm faced with something, it's WWED. What would Emma do? And I believe that Emma said, come get us from this mass grave. I am doing a film about my journey back to Tennessee to find the remains of my family. Do we have 4 minutes to show the trailer? Does anybody have to run out back to work? Okay, and then I'll unveil this. We are doing a movie, and I'm telling you, when I thought I was just finding the Civil War soldier, it turns out this story was bigger than I could have ever imagined. Take a look at this.
Sitting out here on 61, waiting on the Greyhound bus to run.
Officials launch a civil rights investigation into a deadly car crash in Virginia that killed one protester and injured at least 19 others. Junior is accused of plowing his car into a group of demonstrators in Charlottesville.
What you love, you give your time to. I'll take that to the grave.
Old guitar upon this old shotgun. Things right here so bad I'm bound to leave, yeah.
We'll have more news right after this.
This firehouse means so much to me because my father worked here from 1970 until 1980.
He was doing so well, and then poof, he just didn't care anymore.
Fell in love with another man's wife.
You know, he loved us, but he lost his way, and he was alarmingly selfish.
He had a wife, he had 5 children, and he walked away from us with such ease. If I could ask him one thing, I would say, how did you do that? Knowing the pain that you went through.
When I was 13, and my father was killed on the Williamsburg Bridge, that birthed in me a desire to reconnect.
After my father's death, I call it Cheryl Wills AD, I was depressed, confused, and angry as hell. In his funeral program, it said, Clarence Wills was born April 18th, 1942 in Brownsville, Tennessee. And I was like, where the hell is that?
And Daddy was more faithful and believed more than the leader,
That's right.
which was Grandpa. And he failed him.
No doubt. And he failed him during his childhood.
And then
in his adulthood. And Daddy was like, I'm done.
That's it for me.
Yep.
It's a wrap.
Something in me resonated with where I was. I was born in New York City. We knew nothing about Haywood County, 0. My father was born here. My grandfather was born here. His father was born here. And my great-great-grandfather was born here. No one ever talked about this town. We all pretended we were dyed-in-the-wool New Yorkers.
I know I was changed when I found out about Grandpa Sandy.
Don't leave me alone. Don't leave
Sandy Wills joined the Union Army, the only reason why President Lincoln let him in the Army was because he was losing the war. That in order to win the war, as a military necessity, he had to pass the Emancipation Proclamation and let black people into the armies.
He walked away from this place. There was no cars, right? He walked away from that place. And he joined in Union City in August of 1863. That was quite a trek. I really, I have a singular mission to find Grandpa Sandy's remains. A Civil War soldier, in my view, should not be buried in an unmarked grave.
See, it's always emotional.
Yeah.
You come down here, I always feel them.
I could feel their presence.
Yeah, their presence, and they're speaking to us.
And to think now his descendants can't even find him.
First time I've came down to this area, it was 2013. Each time after that, I probably came down here 4 times afterwards. This is how I was able to find this property, because there was a Moreland sign. 3 of them, matter of fact. We fast forward to this week, there's no signage at all.
The people who have clout fight change. I call it that old plantation mentality. They want to keep it like it was in the 50s.
Oh, we know the hard time, all right. White man,
My grandparents left, really, they didn't want to leave. They felt they had to leave.
Civil rights people would march, the African Americans would march in the morning on Saturdays, and the Ku Klux Klan march in the afternoon.
We're not here to cause any trouble.
Absolutely.
We're not here to take anything from anybody. Our family is buried somewhere on this land.
And we just wanna know
have very good reason to believe.
That's
we
it.
checked the cemeteries, and they're
Right,
not there.
right.
It's not just my story. You
We're
could go to
speaking for
Alabama,
thousands,
you could
right.
go to Mississippi, you could go to Georgia, Kentucky.
South Carolina,
Anywhere
North
there were
Carolina.
slaves, they were dumped in mass graves. That when you don't have a firm identity, yeah, you'll throw your life away. And this is an epidemic throughout this country. We don't know who we are.
Worshippers prayed for peace and spiritual healing in this divided nation. They also say the recent events bring back haunting memories of the civil rights movement.
Ooh-wee. Here come that Greyhound bus now, children.
For going back to the PowerPoint very quickly, since that happened, it was hard to be ignored by them. It was painful, actually. I'm not used to being ignored. I've been on television 30 years. People call me off the hook. These people were like, shh. And I was like, wow. Let me calm down because I don't want to do anything to cause any kind of problem. I hired a lawyer, just like Emma, and they sent letters. They ignored all the letters. And it got to the point where I said, you know what? Maybe I should stop. Maybe I should stop. We found Joel Moore's grave, the same Joel that helped Emma, 4 years younger than her. And when I looked at his grave, I had to wonder, what's so wrong with me wanting a marker for my family? And I literally prayed. I don't think this is too much to ask. My family was thrown in a mass grave, and like you heard, a Civil War soldier is supposed to be buried with honor. And I waited. And friends, out of the blue, the family reached out, and just last November, we met for the first time. I knew Emma had something to do with that. Because I said, you know what, if you mean to stop this, I'm not going to reach out to them anymore. And out of the blue, my cousin Ethan said, "Cuz, they're ready to meet." They had an incredible story. Jimmy, James, Anne, and this is the matriarch. They were intimidated by me because they Googled me and, I guess when you see me grinning with Al Sharpton, you think I'm coming to burn down your house. But I wasn't. I just interviewed Al Sharpton. He's not my relative. So they realized that I was sincere, and they gave a full tour of the property. This house is the last slave shack standing. They told me things that blew my mind, that only they would know. They said, oh no, your family's not buried with our family. They're buried here on the other hill. I wouldn't have known that had they not told me. And I looked at these leaves and trees, and I stood on what I have now rechristened Emma's house. And I said, I know I haven't been brought this far for the Lord to leave me now. And I walked on that burial ground and I listened. And these are called divining rods. And you know what divining rods are. And when you walk, you don't even have to move. And I had on gloves to make sure it worked perfectly. Whenever the ground is disturbed, they'll just start to cross on their own as evidence that there is a body beneath. So I had to break it to the family. I said, let me tell you what we're going to do. I have hired a crew. I hired this crew years ago, and I said, I'm giving you this retainer because I believe this is right. They have ground penetrating radar. They are called, they're an archaeology firm. And they constantly get cases like mine where they go, clear the ground, do a dig, catalog the DNA, match it to someone, and make a positive identification. They're called Ohio Valley Archaeology. And I said, I'm coming back this spring with that company, and we're going to clear all these leaves, and we are going to test the remains, every single set of remains, until we find Sandy and until we find Emma. And when we do, I will have them exhumed. I don't care if it's only a tooth that remains. And I will place him, I will hire someone to place him and Emma in full caskets, and they will be reburied in Memphis National Cemetery, flag draped coffin, 21-gun salute, and this country will thank Sandy Wills for his service. That's what Black History Month means to me. And one of the first questions I got, and then I'll unveil this. One of the first things I got, who's going to pay for this? And I'm like, don't come at me with that. Every book that I've sold over 10 years, something told me, set up an LLC. That's not your money. I set up an LLC, and all of the proceeds after I paid the expenses, I saved every dime faithfully because it's sacred money to me telling their story. Ladies and gentlemen, I have more than $100,000. I got this. I got this. I'm so excited. So lastly, I want to share with you this. This is incredible. That's a rich man right there. His name is Lawrence Benenson, really nice guy. I met him at a dinner party, and he said, Cheryl, I bought a copy of the Emancipation Proclamation. And I said, oh, Lord, they're selling all of America's treasures. What's going on? And he said, no. The main Emancipation Proclamation is still in the National Archives. It'll never be sold. But what most people don't know is that President Lincoln signed 40 plus copies. You know that. He signed 40 copies to raise money for his struggling Union Army. Of course, Lincoln knew he had done something with the Emancipation Proclamation that no other president, 15 others, had the nerve to do. So he signed it, he sold them, and there are about 20 that remain that are traceable. One's in the White House, they're in museums and so forth. About 5, give or take, are sold to rich people like this nice guy right here who lives in Manhattan on the Upper East Side. So I said, can I do a story on you? He said, sure. He came into the newsroom, and everyone in my newsroom lined up to get a picture with this. And sure enough, there was Abraham Lincoln's real signature. I'm not going to lie to you. When I walked him to the elevator, after I was done with the interview, this little girl from Queens was like, what you doing with the Emancipation Proclamation? I should have the Emancipation Proclamation. My grandfather actually left a plantation to go fight after Lincoln signed it, and you're walking out the door with it. But you know, the rich get richer. Yeah. So I let it go. A few months after that, the African American Civil War Museum invited me to the nation's capital to give me an honor. They said, Cheryl, we're so proud of you for invoking the legacy of the 200,000 black men that served with your grandpa, Sandy Wills. No one talks about these men. Thank you for going to schools all over the country. They said, we want to give you a prize, a trophy, and we struggled and struggled. What do we give her? What do we give her? Ladies and gentlemen of Downstate, they gave me their copy of the Emancipation Proclamation, authentically signed by Abraham Lincoln and certified by the same man, Seth, who sold that to Lawrence Bennison. And I bring it to you because this is a sign unlike any other that I'm on the right road, baby. This is a sign that Sandy and Emma said, girl, you remember your ancestors. We will open up the heavens to you. What else do you want? I'm so proud of this journey that I've been on, and I'm proud that you packed this room to give me your time and attention. Feel free to take a picture. You just can't take it home. Thank you, everybody. You're a wonderful audience. I really, really appreciate your time and attention. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, everyone. If you could just give me 2 moments of your time, I just want to say thank you very much, Cheryl. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the love, and we appreciate your journey. Thanks. Please, one more round of applause for her. Thank you.